Hi, and welcome back to Wounded on Sixes. Today we're going to be reviewing the Deathguard data sheets that were just leaked out on the internet yesterday. These are still leaks, but I think most of the larger YouTube channels have kind of already gone over these leaks. So we're going to review them here, talk about some of the changes, how I think the units fared. I'm going to say right off the bat, I think the data sheets are fantastic for Deathguard with this codex. So go ahead and like the video, and if you haven't, please go ahead and subscribe, because we're going to have a lot more videos coming out on the Deathguard codex, as well as all the other armies we cover on the channel. We're just going to be doing the data sheets today. We will do the detachments in another video coming up, so stay tuned for that. So first off, we're going to start with the man himself, Mortarian, and this guy got a big glow up here. So he's going to have longer range on his ranged weapons, which is fantastic, because we're going to be seeing a lot more units getting into the contagion affliction than we did previously. His melee weapons, the attacks stayed the same, but he's going to get devastating wounds and lethal hits on his strike, and lethals and sustained on the sweep. He's also going to see a bump up in the AP for that sweep. So he did have some big changes to some of his abilities, and I'm not going to go over every single ability to try to cut down the length of this video, but essentially his Lord of the Deathguard abilities are much better than they used to be. They're not static, they're useful once per turn, and they can only use one per turn, but you know, it allows you to pick strategic moments where they may be useful. You're going to get a reactive move, you're going to get a fight on death, you're going to get a reactive shoot. I mean, some really good stuff here, and all of these things can be used on Mortarian because he will be a friendly Deathguard unit. Also, he has the Host of Plagues, which is now a giant mortal wound bomb, which is awesome. I mean, he's just going to land, count up all the units within 6, roll a d6 for each, and on 3-ups, he's going to do d3 mortals. Mortarian, and they didn't, is just fantastic. And they didn't change any of his, you know, defensive stats either. I mean, he's still T10 or T12. He's got a 2-up save, 4-up invul, the 5-up feel no pain. So you're getting the same exact durable Morty, but with like way more utility. So he's way killier, and I think he's got even more utility as a support for the rest of the army. So I think you're going to be seeing Mortarian in a lot of lists. Now, I would expect a points rise. There was a points leak. It showed 400, which is about what I thought, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see Mortarian go up to 410, even up to 425. He is that fantastic. You're going to be writing this guy in a lot of lists, and I'm really impressed. I think that Mortarian is going to see as much play as he saw before the Codex, and he's going to be seeing a lot more play going forward. We're going to move on to Tyus now, and Tyus didn't have many changes. He's going to get the T7 buff that all the Deathguard Terminators are going to see, and he's also got a couple of more attacks with his strike and his sweep profile, which is really fantastic. Other than that, there's not really much changes. He still has the -1 to hit in melee. He still is able to throw mortal wounds. He's still able to have that unit perform actions and throw that mortal wound. So Tyus has lost absolutely no utility and just gained a lot more hitting power in melee. So I think it's a pretty decent change. Again, it's not leaps and bounds like Mortarian, but I think Tyus needed less work than Mortarian. Another one that I really want to point out here is this Demon Prince of Nurgle. So as you'll notice, there is no more Deathguard Demon Prince. It's now just Demon Prince of Nurgle. And the Demon Prince of Nurgle, I think, is awesome. He's getting an extra move and an extra toughness. So now he's a T12 unit. He's gonna lose the Plague Spewer, but the Infernal Cannon's pretty good with the lethal hits. He's gonna get a little bit more AP with his sweep attack as well. But I think what makes him really good, besides that T12, is that now he's going to be able to get lone op within 3 of Deathguard infantry, which is fantastic. Part of the reason why I didn't really like taking the Demon Prince is just that he could be targeted down. Although he was T11 before, now T12, it still was kind of like, you know, I didn't, for the points, I didn't want him to just get shot off the board. It's going to be way harder for him to get shot off the board. He did lose the 6-up Feel No Pain that he gives to Deathguard infantry, but he will be giving all Deathguard units within 6 the benefits of cover. Not as good as a Feel No Pain, I'll give you that, but still not too bad. He's also going to get a 12-inch free or -1 to CP cost for any unit within 12 of him. That's really good too. So this guy's getting like, a free CP, loan up from the infantry that he's in front of, also giving them the benefits of cover with the T10 and more like AP on his weapons. I think this guy's pretty good. We'll see what the cost is, but I think you're going to see him in a lot of different lists. Particularly, I think you're going to see him in things like the Poxwalker and Plague Marine detachments. Humming along, we got the Lord of Poxes, and this is a brand new unit for the Deathguard. It's got a 5-inch move, a T6 body, which is going to be all the Plague Marines that we're going to see today go up to T6, along with the T7 for Terminators. 3 up, 4 up invul, 5 wounds, leadership 6, and 1 OC. He's going to add 3 to his particular contagion range, so it's just to his contagion range. He's also going to make the Plague Marine unit that he's attached to loan up outside of 18 inches. Absolutely fantastic there. I really like that. Just a little plasma pistol. Nothing really to write home about that there. But a great Plague Blade, devastating wounds and lethal hits, 6 attacks, hitting on 2, strength 8, -2, 2 damage. I think this guy's going to see a crap ton of play. I really like the adding to the contagion, as there's going to be a lot more like units being afflicted bonuses. But the 18-inch loan op for a unit of Plague Marines that you could put on your natural expansion objective just sounds like good money to me. Moving along, we got the Lord of Contagion, and guess what, guys? The Lord of Contagion got better too. He's going to get the T7 here, which is pretty nice, but he's also going to get a +1 strength and AP to his sweep profile, which is really good. He's also going to give the unit that he's leading sustained 1 and lance on the charge to their melee weapons. That's really good and really going to help Blight Lord Terminators, which, guess what, also got a glow up in this book. I think that's really going to help. But I think it's also going to be good in Death Shroud, being able to allow those Death Shroud to kind of hit up into some like higher toughness vehicles with their scythes. He's also got an unholy resilience, so he does have on a 2-up resurrection, which is really good for when you're playing armies that have a lot of precision, that are trying to knock that Lord of Contagion out of your Terminator brick. That's going to allow him to come back up and continue to buff this unit. I think this guy is really good. He's seen a lot of play before this book. I think he's going to see more now. I think it's way more effective than it was previously, and I really like the Lord of Contagion. The Tally Man is the next data sheet that we're going to take a look at here, and not much has changed on his stats except for that T6 that all the Plague Marines are going to see in this codex, but he also is going to keep his 2d6 7-up CP generation, which is always going to keep him valuable. He also has an ability now that the unit that he is leading ignores all ballistic skill, weapon skill characteristic, or any and all hit roll modifiers, which is okay, although his previous rule for this was add 1 to the hit roll. If you ask me, I'd much rather add 1 to the hit roll than an ability that requires my opponent to be lowering my AP. I mean, it's kind of, I guess, the same thing, but when you're not being affected by it, that +1 to AP is just way better. So again, a slight downgrade, but I think a lot of times if you're bringing a Tally Man, you're keeping this guy in your deployment zone just to generate CP. You may not be keeping him with a unit of Plague Marines, and it's been really tough to fit him in with other things. And I think now with like things like the Lord of Poxes and stuff like that, you may see him a little bit less, especially if he's not going to be that great in a Plague Marine squad. But we'll see. Although I do think he'll still see play for that CP generation, as we've gotten a way better suite of stratagems in the Codex. Next, we have the Plague Surgeon. He's going to go up to T6, but if you ask me, the Plague Surgeon is still kind of missing the mark here. So he's going to allow our unit to regenerate 1 bodyguard unit a turn, so 1 Plague Marine can come back a turn, which isn't really a big change from what he was previously. Although now he has an ability where he can select a unit that he is in engagement with in the fight phase, and each time he makes an attack against that unit, and on an unmodified hit roll of 5, he scores lethal hits because that's what his weapons have. If they're below half strength 4, if this affected the whole unit, my God, what a great addition this would be to any Plague Marine squad. The fact that it's just him and he doesn't really have the greatest weapons just doesn't really do it for me. As we're going to see once we get to some of the detachments in another video, there is a enhancement to allow him, I think, to reroll D3 restored bodyguard units. So maybe if you're taking that detachment, but honestly, I still think the Plague Surgeon kind of misses the mark. There's a lot of good things that we can put in the Plague Marine squad. I'm not saying he won't see any play. He's definitely going to see play in that Plague Marine detachment, but I don't know if he's going to see much place anywhere else. So, replacing the Deathguard Demon Prince with wings is going to be the Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings. Personally, I'm not that super impressed with this guy. He did get an extra pip of movement, extra toughness. Um, he's just okay. I mean, his, if you ask me, his ability got a little bit worse because he used to be able to get devastating wounds on the charge. Now he's basically just going to be forcing battle shock test, which he did before. He's also going to keep monsters and vehicles from being able to fall back without having to take a desperate escape test, and -1 to the result there. Personally, none of these abilities really like scream out to me as something like I really want to put into my list. It also, unlike the one without wings, doesn't have the ability to get loan up in any way, shape, or form. So it could really just be shot at. So you're kind of just relying on your 2 up, 4 up to keep you alive. Personally, I just don't think there's been enough done to this model to make it that good or see that much play. I may put it on the table here and there, depending on the list, but there's just so many other priority targets out there. I just can't see using this. Unfortunately, I think this is one of the few downgrades in the book. Although, like I said, the increase to movement and toughness is pretty good. If that's something that you're really looking for in your list, go ahead and throw them in there. Me personally, I'm just a little nervous about how playable and viable this guy will be. Moving down here to the Lord of Virulence now. This guy, on the other hand, has really gotten good. So he's going to get the same change to his toughness of T7. He's going to remain re-rolling the wound rolls for ranged attacks for the model he's leading, which is great. But his second ability has gotten really, really good. Essentially, he gets to pick a unit within 30 and then invisible to him. And then any Death Guard unit for the rest of the round targeting that unit gets to reroll hit rolls of 1. And if it's the mortar on your Plague Burst Crawler, you get to reroll the hit roll instead. I mean, that's really, really good. I mean, again, you could be rerolling that hit roll with the Plague Burst Crawler, using its indirect fire, which is also really cool. So I really like the Lord of Virulence. I think that now he's not only buffing those Plague Burst Crawlers, but he's also buffing other units in your army, and he's really good in things like Death Shroud because he could be re-rolling their wound rolls with the Flamers. So I really like the Lord of Virulence. I think he's going to see play across the board in many, many different detachments. There is now the Malignant Plaguecaster, who has definitely had a couple of changes. I think he's pretty good. One of the biggest ones is that he can now go with Poxwalkers. He also has the ability to give a unit that he's leading sustained hits as long as they're targeting an afflicted unit, which is also really good. And again, it happens in all phases, so it makes an attack. So you can do that in shooting with your Plague Marines or in combat with those Plague Marines or Poxwalkers, which is really cool. His Pestilent Fallout, I think, got a little bit worse because it only subtracts 2 from the movement characteristic. His previous rule would subtract 2 from the movement advance and charge roll, so a little bit of a downgrade, but the fact that we could put him with Poxwalkers is really nice. He also got the T6 glow up. I think he's going to see a lot of play, particularly just with that first ability, that Gift of Contagion, because there's just so much more ways to get units afflicted in the Codex than there was previously. So I think the Malignant Plaguecaster is going to see a lot of play here. We also have the Noxious Blightbringer. Now, the Noxious Blightbringer has been a unit that hasn't really worked very well in Deathguard for a while. I don't think I've played this guy since 8th edition or something like that. I mean, he's just not that fantastic. He's gotten a little bit better. He can go with Poxwalkers, which is nice, just like the Malignant Plaguecaster can. So that is definitely a bonus. He also has the ability to add one to the movement characteristics and making units reroll their charge and advance rolls. This is actually pretty good because before he only had the reroll advance and charge rolls. Now he's actually adding one to the movement characteristic. Good with those Plague Marines, good with those Poxwalkers because now they move 5, so they'll be moving 6, and rerolls to their advance and charge roll is great. Again, I think he's going to see a lot of play, probably more in Poxwalkers than he is Plague Marines, just because Plague Marines have like a lot of other options. He also has like a aura of battle shock testing ability for units that are within 9. That's pretty decent, especially if you're using him in the type of unit that's going to be disrupting your opponent's, you know, units that are set up on objectives. Going after a unit that your opponent is constantly throwing CP stratagems at. This guy will be there. Again, I think he's going to see most of his play in Poxwalkers, and in most of that, it's going to be in the Poxwalker detachment. But I could be wrong. We'll see. He's pretty decent. He's gotten a little bit better. I think he went from like a 4 to a 6 out of 10 now. So you're definitely going to see him more on the board than you normally would have previously. Moving along, we have the Foul Blightspawn. Now, the Foul Blightspawn has taken a little bit of a dip here. The Foul Blightspawn was essentially a must-have in every single Deathguard army that was bringing Plague Marines, particularly a 10-man Plague Marine brick, and that is because the Blightspawn had the fights first ability. Now you'll see that he doesn't have the fights first ability. Essentially, he has a once per game fights first ability, which is okay. But he also can do it to a unit that is we could select a model in our army that hasn't used this ability yet. So I'm assuming you're just going to use it on the unit that he's in there. But again, it's not an all the time fights first. It's kind of just like a once per battle fights first. I think there's also a stratagem in the book to give fights first. So will the Foul Blightspawn be seeing play in every single list? Maybe not. I'm probably still going to include him in a couple of my Plague Marine companies, especially if you're bringing the Plague Marine detachment. You're going to have several different units of Plague Marines. You could definitely put him in there. Definitely a little bit of a downgrade from all the time fights first. I'll give you that. The biologist Putrefier is here, and he's pretty decent. Not too many changes. One of the biggest ones is, though, he lost his ability to give out a free grenade strat, which is kind of poopy. Not exactly what we wanted to see there, but beggars can't be choosers. His Hyper Blight grenade strength definitely went up. So that is something. He went from strength 5 to strength 7. That's a nice little glow up. He's still going to give any unit that he's in lethal hits, and he's also going to make sure that those criticals go off on 5s instead of 6s. So you're still going to have that ability with the Plaguecaster. He also has the ability to add 6 objective control to himself if he's in a unit that kills another enemy unit. So he can go from 1 OC to 6 or 7 OC, I'm sorry. So that is actually really, really impressive because he's going to be in a unit that's going to be hurting other units, and he's going to help make sure that that Plague Marine squad just does not lose that objective because he's going to get that extra OC. I think all around, well, I'm going to miss the free grenade strat. I still think that this guy's pretty good, and you're going to see him in several different lists. We now come to the Plague Marines, who have definitely gotten better. They were always really good, but as you could see, they got that T6 bonus that every other Plague Marine adjacent model has gotten, but also they got a big blow up on their ability. So their ability before was basically remorseless, which was essentially allowing them to add 1 to their battle shock test if they were in range of an objective marker. not that great. Kind of very, very, very situational. Their new data sheet ability is really good, infused with the blessings of Nurgle in our shooting phase. Each time a unit is selected to shoot, after it has shot, select one enemy unit hit by one of those attacks until the next turn. Those units are afflicted. So essentially, allowing us to throw our affliction out into the wind there and see who we hit. So that is definitely a change here that I wanted to point out. Now, another change that I wanted to point out is on the Blight Launcher, which is something that I have not really used, but I may bring back. It's now a D3 rather than a flat 3. Other than that, its strength and characteristics have stayed the same, except now it has blast. So you actually have the ability of getting more than 2 shots out of it. Before it was just a flat 2. So with blast, you might be able to get more, and that 24 inches plus with the plasma gun, like I think you're going to want to have those in your Plague Marine army, because now that you have the ability to shoot contagion onto people, I think you're going to want to see that Blight Launcher and those plasma guns a lot more. I was kind of always running the plasma guns, so the Blight Launcher is just kind of a bonus here. But the Plague Marines are really, really good, especially at T6. Like, they are really going to hum along here. And they have their own detachment in the book, which I think is really, really good. We'll go over that in another video. But yeah, the Plague Marines look really, really spicy here. We then have the Poxwalkers, who are always going to be on the board now. So we lost our ability to bring cultist. So Poxwalkers are going to be essentially the new cultist. They got a movement 5 bonus, which is nice. They also got the infiltrator ability, which is just awesome. Just awesome. No real other changes to any of their abilities here. The Curse of the Walking Pox and being able to use that with Typhus. I don't know how much you're going to see Typhus in Poxwalkers, just because they have so many more characters that can go in them. But the fact that you can have 20-man Poxwalkers in the middle of the board infiltrating just sounds like an incredible amount of fun to me. And I think that that's going to make Deathguard very, very competitive, because now you're going to be able to get up in opponents' faces with big bricks of units in the middle of the board. If they can't stop you with infiltrate, it's going to be a bad time. Poxwalkers are going to be everywhere. The Poxwalker detachment looks unbelievably silly. So be prepared, get those Poxwalkers ready. I know myself, I got to get a couple more kits, because I think I only have like 50 or 60 of them. You're going to see a lot of Poxwalkers out there in a lot of different lists, just because now they're their only infiltrate ability, unless you're bringing the Demon Codex and you bring in some Nurglings. And I think the Poxwalkers way better than the Nurglings in that respect. We also have the Icon Bearer. Um, he's okay. I think the problem essentially with the icon bearer is that I mean, he does good things, but I don't know if I want to really pay for them. Adding one to the objective control of models in our unit is really good. Plague Marines are OC2, making them OC3, putting 30 OC on a objective is pretty good. But 9 times out of 10, like, people are not going to be able to move our 10 Plague Marine brick off it anyway. So adding one more to the objective characteristics sometimes win more. It could definitely come into effect, particularly if there's some ability to knock down all of our natural OC, something like that. He also has an ability to basically remove battle shock from a unit. That's pretty cool too. I don't really know how often you're going to use that. So the icon bearer, if you have one, he be feel free to bring him in, especially if you're bringing that Plague Marine detachment. But I kind of feel like there's just so many other things that you could be doing out there. The icon bearer, it's kind of like the odd man out. He has some decent abilities, but they're not abilities that really speak to my playstyle. So I don't know how much I'm going to be putting him into my list. Moving along, we got Blight Lord Terminators, and this is one of the data sheets that I was most excited to see, because I really think that the Blight Lords were suffering from some like pretty crappy rules previously, and I think they have really upped the ante on how good these units can be. So, a couple of different changes. They're going to be moving 5 instead of 4. They're going to be T7, just like all the other Terminators there. One of the biggest changes is that their bubonic blades is now 2 damage rather than 1. That is absolutely huge. It's still strength 5, -2, but it is really important that we get that extra pip of damage out of these guys. They just were always lacking in that department of not having 2 damage weapons, and now they have it, which is really cool. But also, their data sheet ability has gotten way better. Their last data sheet ability for Blistering Fusillade was essentially anti-synergistic, whereas this one is just so much better. So, if you have a starting strength of 5 or more, or there's a character leading the unit, each time you make a ranged attack that targets an afflicted unit, you can improve the strength and armor penetration characteristic by 1. So, that is really good, especially because now our all of our weapons are going to go up a little bit in strength because we kind of do suffer. A lot of these guys are just bringing combi bolters and combi weapons. Some can bring blight launchers and reaper autocannons, and those will definitely be improved. But I think this is a way better rule. I mean, it's not the most outlandish rule out there, but it's way better than the anti-synergistic crap that they had before. Another weird thing I wanted to point out is that you could now bring the Blight Lords in units of 3, which is it's kind of weird. I'm not really sure why they brought a unit of 3. They do have weapon gear options for when you bring 3 models, so you can bring like a plague spewer and some combi bolters as well, but none of the other bigger special heavy weapons. I can't really see a scenario where I'm going to be wanting to bring 3 units, simply because I just don't really have the OC to kind of like stake out an objective. I'm looking at this as more as like I want to bring big Blight Lord Terminator bricks. And I think that that is possible. And I think that the Blight Lords are definitely more playable. I think that all of the Terminator leaders that can go in there have kind of come up too. So you're going to see Blight Lords a lot more. And I think the Flyblown host is going to see, you're going to just see a sea of Blight Lord Terminators out on the field now. So I'm really happy with the changes that we've seen to Blight Lords. We then have their friends, the Death Shroud, who got the same kind of changes to their movement and toughness, which is awesome. Like anytime we can get more toughness out of our Terminators, we will take it. They are their rules kind of changed a little bit. So previously they had to subtract 1 from the wound roll if the strength of the weapon was higher than their toughness. Now they're only going to be giving their character leader a 4-up field pen. That is good protection against things like, high precision armies that like to go after your character. So that is good. But to to further replace their ability that they lost, they have a second ability now that's really important, and it basically gives them a 6-inch deep strike if all of the units that they are outside of 6 inches from are afflicted. Otherwise, it's got to be 9 inches. So it's not like a flat 6-inch deep strike, but with with the ability to throw contagion across the board, this is going to get a lot more easy to do, and this is going to guarantee that our weapons get in on the enemy. Another big change that I want to kind of point out as well is that the sweep attack has changed. It was strength 5, no AP. It's now strength 4, -1. You're also going to get 2 more attacks with it. It's also only hitting on 3s, whereas the strike is hitting on 2s. So this is definitely a change. I'm not sure why the weapon skill changed with the sweep. But you are getting 2 extra attacks with it, but 1 less strength. So that is something to bear in mind. I personally think that the Death Shroud are still really good, despite losing the -1 to wound, just because the deep strike, the 6-inch deep strike is going to make sure that the Death Shroud get in, and that's always been a problem with Death Shroud, is that sometimes you drop them in 9, they fail the charge, and then they are just out of range for the rest of the game, and they're kind of just, maybe scoring you some secondary points. So this is going to ensure that these really tough, killy units get into combat way more often, and I think that is going to really kind of help bring up the efficiency numbers of Death Guard for sure. We're now going to look at the Chaos Spawn, and this guy's had a couple of different changes here. The toughness has gone way up from T5 to T7, which is pretty good. He also got a Scout 6, which is nice, but also comes with a Deadly Demise 1. It used to just have the 5 of Feel No Pain. The Scout 6 is really good. It has lost the ability to regain wounds and instead has like a mortal wound allocation after a unit has finished making its attacks against it. Not the greatest ability if you ask me, but okay. Again, it's only one mortal wound, but what I like about this is that it's like a T7 body with 4 wounds, and you can bring units of 2, and they have scout. So in certain circumstances, particularly non-fly blown host detachments, where you don't have the built-in scout with your detachment rule, this guy could see some decent play. I like the toughness spike on there. I think it's way better than T5, and that's probably why they got rid of the regenerating wound ability on the datasheet. We're then going to look at the Mephitic Blight Hauler, and this guy right here is looking real spicy now, guys. I mean, I am really happy with the Mephitic Blight Hauler. Couple of things to point out. One, its Melt-A-Gun got lethal hits, which is awesome. It's going to guarantee a little bit more damage coming in with that weapon, so I'm happy to see that for sure. Another change is that the Tank Hunter ability got switched. So rather than just adding 1 to the rune roll when you're targeting vehicles, in your shooting phase, if you target monsters and vehicles now, you get to add 1 to the hit roll and add 1 to the wound roll as well. So when you combine the fact that the Melta now has lethal hits, and now you're going to be adding 1 to the hit and wound roll against those monsters and vehicles, I think you're going to see a lot more Mephitic Blight Haulers. I mean, they're a nice small package. Another change is to the unit composition. You used to be able to take these guys in units of 3. You're now only going to, or 1 unit of 3, you now can only bring them in units of 2 or 1. So rather than having 9 on the board, you're now only going to be able to field a maximum of 6. So those of you that have 9 Mephitic Blight Haulers out there, just be prepared to, I don't know, maybe sell the other 3 or something like that. Trade them in at your local game shop for some store credit. But you're going to probably want to play with the other 6 that you have, because these are looking really good. And if the points are right, I mean, this could possibly replace some of the knights that I've been running in my Death Guard list, just to kind of make up for the poor anti-tank. We then have a split of the fetid blow drone. So now, rather than only being able to take 3 fetid blow drones, this now means that we can take a total of 6 blow drones. So first is just the regular fetid blow drone, and this one is going to have either the flesh mower or the plague probe. Not much has changed on this data sheet, to be honest with you. They still have the hovering death ability, so that hasn't really changed. The flesh mower is still the same. The plague probe is still the same. You're just going to be able to get, you know, now you're now going to be able to field 3 of these particular variants, and then 3 of the next variant, which is the ones with the heavy blight launcher. Now these have kind of been split up, and the heavy blight launcher is okay. It's gotten better because now it's D6 plus 2 rather than the flat 6. It now has blast, but it's strength 10 negative 2, and it's 3 damage rather than 2. So this guy's gun has gotten way better, and now you can field 3 of them if you like, which is pretty cool. They also have this ability where if they destroy a model, they can roll a d6 for each unit around them, and then those units can be afflicted to the next turn. So basically like contagion splash damage, which is really cool. Don't know how often that's going to happen, but the fact now that I can run 6 fetid bloat drones, which I love the bloat drones. I've been running them a lot in my competitive list. It's just, it just speaks to me, man. Like, we're going to have a lot. Like, I can imagine, especially in the Deathguard vehicle detachment, just a whole ton of Deathguard vehicles, blight haulers, bloat drones, plague burst crawlers. Like, it's going to be so much fun to get these units out on the board. We now have the Hellbrute, which is replacing the Deathguard Hellbrute, and this guy is pretty decent. I mean, he was pretty good before. His ability was he was able to put units into contagion if he hit them with one of his weapons. That kind of has been removed from him, and now he has, each time he targets a unit that is afflicted, he adds one to the wound roll. He also gets two extra attacks if he is not bringing any ranged weapons to whatever melee weapons he has, which is a change. I think he used to have something like twin linked on his melee weapons. Personally, I always rather more attacks than twin linked, although a lot of people like the rerolls, and I do like rerolls. I think the Hellbrute's decent. Adding one to the wound roll for him is pretty good, especially because he only has one weapon system that's above, that's T12 or above. So being able to add one to the wound roll means that like his lighter AT weapons can now kind of punch up, which I think is decent. I mean, he's a small body. He's got 3 OC, so he's pretty decent at holding down an objective for a little while if you need him. And he's also not bad at tank shock with T9. Being able to like shoot, run in, charge, tank shock, do some damage with your melee weapons. I mean, I think this is a really good weapon system, and I think that he'll see some play, particularly because I think that you know rather than bring a knight that doesn't help with your contagion range or benefit from some of the really good detachment rules now, maybe you can like substitute a knight with a Hellbrute because you can kind of guarantee a little bit more damage with that +1 to wound for afflicted units. So all in all, I kind of like the changes to the Hellbrute here, and I think he'll definitely continue to see some play in some Deathguard lists. We then have the Defiler, and the Defiler has definitely gotten a little bit better just because a lot of the detachment roles have gotten a little bit better, particularly when it comes to the vehicle friendly detachment out there. So this guy is got a T11 bump. He was T10, so that's decent. And he's got an ability that each time the model makes a normal advance or scout move, it can move through friendly monsters or vehicles of a height of 3 or less. So you don't have to worry about him not being able to get around with his big base because you have your own vehicles there and vehicles can't pass through other vehicles. This guy allows you to do it, which is really cool. There's no extra steps there. There's also a stratagem in one of the detachments to allow vehicles to move through terrain horizontally. I think that's really going to get stapled to the Defiler here. So I think the Defiler has definitely gotten a little bit of a glow up here. I think he was seeing a lot of play in like the super shooty Deathguard list, and I think he still will continue to see that, especially now that he's able to like walk through everybody. He's going to have a strat to walk through different terrain pieces, which is really cool. I think that it's a decent weapon system, and we're probably going to be seeing more of those Defilers out on the board. We're now going to move along to the Chaos Predator Annihilator. And again, this was the Deathguard Predator Annihilator, now just renamed the Chaos Predator Annihilator. And it's okay. Not many changes. Most of the stat line is the same. The biggest change is to their ability. They used to have an ability where if they targeted a monster or vehicle, they'd re-roll the damage roll. Now they have an ability where if they target a monster or vehicle and they hit it with some attacks, they roll a d6, adding 1 to the result. If the unit's afflicted, and on a 5-up, the unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. So you're no longer going to be able to kind of reset your damage dice on those d6 +1 last cannon shots, but you do have the ability to add a couple of more wounds with the with that d3 mortal ability. Personally, I still kind of rather re-roll my damage rolls than this. I mean, It's just an extra dice roll now, and it's only D3, whereas I have the ability to kind of spike way more damage by re-rolling my damage roll. So if you ask me, this is a little bit of a downgrade for the Chaos Predator Annihilator. Again, this wasn't the one that was seeing most of the play. It was the next one we're going to be looking at. Personally, I think this might kind of hurt play even more just because I think not being able to re-roll those very swingy las cannon shots and just giving them this D3 mortal thing just isn't as good. So I would imagine we're not going to see much of the Predator Annihilator. Although we could definitely in the new Deathguard vehicle detachment, because you're going to have the ability to have longer range units in be afflicted because of the detachment rule. So I could see it seeing play there, but maybe not much else. We also have the Chaos Predator Destructor, and just like the Annihilator, not many changes here. One big one that I wanted to point out is that the Predator autocannon went from strength 9 to strength 10. All the rest is the same, but there was definitely a change to the unit's data sheet ability. So before, if it was targeting infantry, you got +1 to the armor pen. Now, if you target anything but a monster or vehicle, you then make it so that any of your Death Guard units that target that same unit for the rest of that phase will add 1 to the armor penetration of those weapons. So it doesn't actually improve the AP on this weapon system. It will improve the AP on other Death Guard targets. Personally, I still think this is pretty good because we're going to be able to throw contagion around everywhere. We're probably not going to need that extra armor pen on the Predator autocannon, so I don't think you're going to miss it as much as you think you would. And now this thing is going to make it so that the rest of our Death Guard units are getting an extra +1 AP. If that thing's afflicted, it can now, be -1 toughness, plus -1 with save, and an extra AP. Like, although this is a change, I think this is almost a more positive change given the overall changes to the Codex. Like I said, the affliction being way easier to get to units, especially across the board. This is going to probably be stapled still to the Death Guard vehicle detachment. And honestly, I like it. I don't think that the Destructor is going to see that much slip in play because I think that this ability is still pretty good and might actually be better than the previous one. Rounding out the last of the data sheets, we have the Plague Burst Crawler. Now, the Plague Burst Crawler has been a unit that's always been a favorite of mine, although I have been having trouble making it work lately. But there's been some changes here. First off, to one of the ranged weapons, the Entropy Cannon is now from 24 inches to 36-inch range. That is awesome. That's really what a lot of people wanted to see. The ability to kind of reach out with a strong strength weapon at longer range. The 24 inches just made us put our crawler in too many bad positions and didn't allow it to kind of just stay back and be a good artillery piece. So now it can do that, which is really cool. Another change has been to its ability. The ability before basically just made units hit by it take a battle shock test. Now what it kind of does is it will like make units around it suffer mortar wound splash damage. And where I think that's going to be really applicable is where like when you get to go first turn one and your opponent is kind of like all huddled behind a ruin, like with a ton of their models, you can now like target those down with your Plague Burst Crawler and do mortal splash damage to all those units hiding behind like a ruin and stuff like that. I think that's really cool. This is going to get way better in the vehicle detachment. I think Plague Burst Crawlers are going to see a lot more play. I'm definitely going to be adding them to a lot more of my list going forward. I'm pretty excited about it. And lastly, we have the Chaos Rhino, which is the last data sheet spoiled in these leaks. And the Chaos Rhino is good. It's a good vehicle. I always liked, stuffing it with my Plague Marines and running it up the board. It did get a change to its ability, which I think is actually a big one up. Previously, it just gained one lost model in your command phase, or one lost wound in your command phase. Now, after it makes its shooting attacks, you can select one of those models to have rerolls of the wound roll made to it for units that disembark from the Chaos Rhino. So now you can be getting some support utility out of your Rhino instead of it just driving up the board and dropping some guys out there. It now helps to provide support to the units getting out. Essentially, the Plague Marines getting out. So I really like this, and I think that the Chaos Rhino is like a really good vehicle. I mean, it was a good vehicle before, but now that it's actually providing some fire support and some support to the units that it's transporting, it's just gotten that much better. So, all in all, I think that this Deathguard Codex has taken a big leap forward from the index, and I think that we're going to see a lot of play coming out of these units. I think this is going to be one of the top performing factions going forward, and I'm excited to see where those lists go. So we're going to have a video coming out soon with the actual detachment rules, as this video is just long enough. So stay tuned for that. Please go ahead and like the video if you've stuck with me this far. And if you haven't yet, please go ahead and subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subs. We're getting there so quick, and I just want to thank everybody for tuning in and coming back for more Wounded on Sixes.